Where are you at? Are you centered? Do you have a healthy relationship with conflict, which is like ultimately scales up to violence? Yet I enjoy life. You know what I mean? Yet I've come to grips with a lot of stuff that's not just and not fair. And I'm still trying, centered sometimes, not centered sometimes. But I kind of starting to know where the center is.
There does need to be a process for guys to offload the burdens that they're carrying. And there wasn't largely, right? Particularly in Western culture. He walks into the room and the energy in the room changes. Calm can take place. We'll say violently aggressive. Okay.
Yeah.
Which one do I want to be for the people in my world? What's up, guys? No Nonsense Podcast. Today I got a special guest, my friend, my client, Tommy Moseley. Tommy is an entrepreneur, former pastor, has lived an insane life. You've seen Tommy on past episodes with me, and Tommy's just a guy that I really enjoy having conversations with. We share some similar views. We disagree on some certain things, but all in all, I think we just enjoy the conversations that we have together. So really happy to have you here today, brother. And
Good to be here. Good to be here.
Excited to dive in. Tommy texted me a couple days ago. He's like, I got some things that I want to talk about. So I was like, all right, well, let's get in the studio and
see if we can't get ourselves in trouble.
Yeah, try to see if we can stir up some trouble, right?
Yes, sir.
Cool. So what do you want to dive into?
Let's start with, you said something. I always framed it, violence is neither good or bad. It's just a vehicle. You got to have good violence to, if you don't have good violence, you can't combat the bad guys. And you framed it in a new way I'd never heard, that if you're a man, and I believe it's right to the heart of it, if you're a man, you need to have a healthy relationship with violence.
Absolutely.
I'm not saying you have to be a violent person, but your job as a man is to provide and protect. And I think today is clear to define what the roles are, because obviously they're trying to water down the roles and keep those protectors down. But if you're a man, provide and protect is what you have to do. And you can't, I'm blown away by how many pussies are out there right now. Mm-hmm. Like men who just refuse to even have any kind of plan whatsoever. I'm talking not armed, not anything, just no plan. They're just pure victims. Might as well be women. And I think it's a big enough deal to talk about. I particularly, I enjoy it, from a sport standpoint especially, but it's just always been something that's fascinated me. And you've got a, tremendous background in fighting and in training and in jiu-jitsu, which I respect, and still going strong, still training daily. I know the difference between someone who trains every day and someone who trains 2-3 times a week. Right. And it's pretty big, so you framed it in a different way. And I kind of want to hear your take, because it's so true. It has nothing to do with good or bad. It just has to do with your role as a man. If you don't know how to, we have a right to bear arms, and that's specifically written to protect yourself against the government. Currently, the government right now today is full on, is infiltrated. The bad guys have infiltrated. Yeah. And there's no question that they wrote that for our own protection, even though they try and water it down. So, whether it's guns or fighting, what are you going to do if someone jumps out at you? If you don't have a plan, to me, it's kind of mind-boggling how many people, will have a full-on family, and if you broke into their house, they would just all, the guy would pee himself.
Yeah. So I have a lot of thoughts, and I'll try to unpack them slowly. I think the first thing is, as you're saying all of that, right? I'm thinking I was at a training a week ago or so, and the training was on the concepts that the samurai used, right? And so this training was supporting us to integrate these things into business, into life, into all the different domains that people live, how the code of the samurai could be helpful and used as a tool or appropriately a weapon, right? One of the things that they were talking about is the samurai in their mind, right, in their intention when they're going out into the battlefield, it's to expect nothing but be ready for anything. Okay, so I think that's a great way to just look at life, let alone a battlefield. I think the reason I think battlefields and war and violence and fights are so they paint such vivid pictures is because they're sort of extreme circumstances. And in extreme circumstances, if you just get caught up in how extreme they are and panic, well, you're not going to do so well, right? So
Indeed.
it's probably not going to work out favorably more often than not, okay? So when we talk about these extreme situations that turn up the dial on stress, I think stress will give us like a magnifying glass into somebody's true character, okay? And so when we use fighting, violence, war analogies, and then you put yourself in that place, it's going to turn up the dial on your true character. And so things that might be hard to see in your everyday life, right? We're just going about having coffee, taking meetings, right? Nothing too stressful. It's easy for some of these, we'll say, weaker, stronger parts of our character to fly under the radar. They won't be as noticeable because there's nothing coming out that's bringing them to light, right? But life's not like that.
No, sure not. That's what blows me away.
Yeah, right? So to understand yourself when the heat is on, to understand yourself in an actual life or death situation, like obviously we don't strive for those things. I don't want to be in life or death situations ever if I don't have to, and certainly don't want them all the time. But I do understand that there's a potential for that.
Right.
And so do I want to be prepared if and when that happens, right? If and when I ever have to protect my wife, my loved ones, my friends, do I want to be able to do so? Do I want to feel safe in my own skin, right? So there's a lot of people, and this never dawned on me for a long time until I started like actually hearing women tell their story, and even men that just, you know, we'll say weren't the most physically strong men, but like, you know, when a woman walks to her car in a parking lot at night, it's a very different experience than you or I walking to our car or in a parking lot at night. They're looking around, checking for, you know, safety measures. Am I going to be attacked? Am I going to be able to handle if something happens, right? And as people started to tell me this was years ago when this shocked me. I was like, man, that is not my experience at all.
Right.
There's not really a place in this country that I feel threatened or in any kind of danger. And I'm not naive. Like there's neighborhoods that if I'm in a specific neighborhood, I will understand my surroundings and register any potential threats, right? The energy in which I carry myself does not promote anybody to think that I'm going to be an easy mark. So I generally just don't get into altercations wherever I go. And it's not a bravado. It's not anything forced. It's just the energy of preparedness.
The energy of preparedness. I like that. The reality is things like this will come up, and you're going to, you know, and it could be once in every 10 years. And I never go out and look for anything. You would have to literally come after my kids to bring out the violence in me. And all the time, you know, a guy was honking at me the other day, and I was like, what is it you want? Is this something you want to fight about? And he just, you know, everyone thinks they do, and he just learn how to drive and drives off. It's like, okay, what was the point of that? It wasn't really, you know, I obsess on anything, you know, when it came to, especially when I had my kids and kind of realized, you know, I had to do everything I can to protect them, you know, and be prepared and in every way. I've never wanted to be pushed around, so you know that's always brought up, you know, because I have pathological demand avoidance. So anyone bullying me is something that I have to resolve and figure out. Okay, how am I going to win this? I don't understand. You know, I don't understand the mentality of just kind of being the nice and soft. You know. And interestingly enough, because I was a longtime pastor at the Rock Church, and I did study the Bible, you know, and I looked at it, man, and I studied it for years and years and years, and I went to classes, and there was one particular part where where Jesus says the kingdom of God is taken over by righteous men. But you look up the word because you can match it with the Greek. And we were doing this whole study, and that word is not righteous or upright men, they call it. It's violent. You know, Jesus himself saying the kingdom of God is going to be taken over by violent men, which says, again, if it's coming from God, if that's how you want to think about it. But I thought that was really interesting that the good things are taken by people who are willing to assert and go get it and go and take their life. And myself too. I've never had anyone really just call me out in maybe since my 20s where it doesn't happen. I think it's because I carry myself because I'm not mad dogging people. I'm not trying to be tough, and I'm also not trying to be weak. And I'm ready if someone, especially if I have my kids with me. So it just doesn't happen for me. But I learned that same thing a few years ago at a Tony Robbins thing when he said, let me see, show of hands, how many women have felt unsafe, physically threatened last week? Every woman raised their hand. I was like, wait, what? How is that even possible? And that struck me to the core of like, okay, men in society, I think the measurement of a man is how safe someone feels around you. And if there's that much unsafety, that's a man issue.
Yeah.
That's a man issue.
Can be. Absolutely.
I mean, it's obviously, like you said, very different experience, but I think there's become, come a point where, and make no mistake about it, I think there's intentional measures being made to emasculate men in America.
Yeah,
period.
absolutely.
If you think that government is good guys and aren't up to this evil shit, your head is in the sand. So that's kind of one of those things, especially with all the watering down. And I don't care what people do with their life, but the watering down and then trying to make it bad to be a man and he, her, him, them, the whole thing just, I see right through it because I see through bullshit. Got that gift kind of like you do. And so more and more, I have 2 boys, so I have to, every day they know, that what your job is. I remind them every day.
Right.
You're different. You're, especially my oldest, he's got a girlfriend. What's his job? I make sure he opens the door for him. I make sure he knows here's what your role is when it comes to the rest of the world.
Yeah.
and how much you have in their back. I have a plan, and I think it's important to start telling, other men the same thing. Have a plan. Don't just be okay just being going with the flow of society and saying, it's a victim. You're a victim if you don't. That's how do you not be a victim?
Setting yourself up.
You're setting yourself up to be. Yeah,
absolutely.
I mean, you're a victim of absolutely. Like I'm bullying. I hate bullying. That's why I'm not a fan of the government, religion, a lot of different things. And you're setting yourself up to be bullied. You're not going to be able to resist if you really have to.
Right.
And whether that's an individual attack or a full on, whatever it is. Men, you ain't ready.
Well, what's the definition of a victim, right? It's to not have a choice. A true victim. There is true victimhood in the world. True victimhood is where a person doesn't have a choice, right? So, God forbid, something terrible happens to a child, right? Some predatory thing. That kid did not have a choice. There's nothing that kid could have done to prevent what happened to them, right? That is very different from choosing not to be prepared as an adult. Preparing yourself gives you a choice in anything.
Yeah.
In anything. If you want to be prepared in business, well, have a choice, right? It's like opening a business and hoping it does well.
Right.
Like, I hope the circumstances align, and
that's not how it works.
Or, right, I take this proactive stance of learning the ins and outs of my business, the ins and outs of attracting attention to my business, the ins and outs of bringing in people that are going to spend money with me. So it's a lot. Opening a business is a lot more than, okay, I have this service or product that I want to sell, and I hope that people recognize how good it is.
They won't.
Most of the time, they won't. Yeah, most of the time they won't. Right. So, okay, you can prepare yourself to the best of your ability. And it's why so many businesses fail. It's like, the more and more business owners that I meet, the more and more I understand why businesses fail. Is because
they're victims.
They treat.
You know what? You said something yesterday. It's not fair. And bro, I'm paying off this lawsuit. It wasn't fair.
Right.
And you know what? It's true. It's real life. Fuck it. I still got to stay in business. Yeah. I still got to fight. It's got to be taken over by someone. I'm not going to just.
Yeah.
You're right.
The other part of the samurai code, right, is that the battlefield is neither just nor fair.
Yeah.
Okay.
Man.
And if you focus on well, I'm not doing anything until this gets just and fair. Well, you're going to spend a lot of time waiting. The moment I begin focusing on that, I no longer am focused on what it is that I'm creating.
Yeah.
The moment I'm focused on just and fairness, and why is it like this and why is it like that, and well, what am I actually trying to get done? I'm wanting somebody else to step in and intervene to make it right before I can feel okay. I need somebody else to pacify me so that I can feel okay. And if that's what you want to do, that's fine. Just recognize what you're doing, right? It is a way to not take responsibility for moving forward. Despite the fact that circumstances are imperfect, I still get to move forward. I still have the choice to move forward.
And let's throw it out there. If you're a man on the battlefield, I'm not talking about a street fight, or I don't think you're talking about life. Life's not just or fair.
Nope.
Digest that, get that through your soul, and do something about it, because it's 100% true. If you're waiting around for anyone to be fair, it's just or just it's just because first of all, it's going to be how you see it, and it's
all perspective.
It really is a complete waste of.
Well, dude, think about it, right? Just or fair. Well, I'm 5'6" and I'm bald, right? Fortunately, I'm married, but I'm 5'6", I'm bald, I'm physically disfigured, I have these horrendous cauliflower ears. The game is not set up like if I was to get on a dating app right now and list those things about me, I cut myself off from 50 or 60% of the dating pool right away. Probably more than that, right? I'll be generous. Okay, I mean, it's really unfair that women don't like short, bald men with grotesque ears.
Well, I'm just going to throw out there, your wife is beautiful, so I wouldn't cry too much about the unfairness.
But you get what I'm saying, right?
Exactly.
Yeah, you get what I'm saying. But it's like, dude, I literally, when I was single, I had hair, I had women reject me purely on the basis of height.
Yeah?
Numerous times.
Oh, yeah.
Numerous times.
Unfair.
I literally don't have a choice in my height, right? But I do have a choice in my attitude. I absolutely have a choice in my attitude.
Yeah.
So I'm being a little bit absurd, and I'm painting a picture, and I don't want to stray too far off into that, because it's a fascinating conversation in itself. I think to abhor violence, there are people that hate violence and don't have a relationship with violence,
which is all fear.
It's all fear. And that's exactly what it
is,
right?
Why
it's
you go
easy
forward,
to hate something
I think,
that you don't understand. I think that's where a lot of hatred comes from, a lack of understanding and fear, right? It's easier for me to hate something than outwardly speak into the fact that I'm afraid of it and I don't understand it. I think that's where racism comes from. I think that's where sexism comes from. I think that's where a lot of
the religious discord comes from.
Any type of like animosity and hatred and that type of vitriolic, hateful thinking. I think a lot of that is fear and a lack of understanding.
Yeah,
I think all of it. I think the way that certain people feel about men right now, right? I think it's a fearful lack of understanding. I understand why the pendulum has swung the way it has. I understand that for a long time, men actually, this whole idea that we need to go back to this like 1950s version of men, I think is really, really off balance. I don't want more men like my father, right? And it's not his. They didn't have any tools.
They
did the best they
didn't
could
have tools. That's a good way to put it. They did the best they could with what was in their world.
So we had these men running around purely based off this like might is right sort of principle, right? Which I don't think is good in the long run. The world may not be just or fair, but I want to be just and fair. So just because the world might not be just and fair doesn't mean that I won't aim to be just and fair. A lot of people weren't. A lot of people were abusive. A lot of people didn't have tools, right? A lot of people were bearing emotional burdens, working 7 days a week to keep food in a roof over kids' heads. A lot of people coming back from war and combat that had no tools to actually talk about what happened to them. People that saw their friends get blown up in war. Then they come home. Nobody's there to support them. And they just got to go on.
Yeah.
Right? We don't talk about this stuff. And it's not that we need to talk about stuff the same way that women talk about stuff, although that actually can be useful in its own context. There does need to be a process for guys to offload the burdens that they're carrying. And there wasn't largely, right? Particularly in Western culture. Think about your your lineage, your male lineage? Did these guys have a way to offload their emotional burdens in a healthy and productive way?
No. I remember when I was 5 years old and crying, my dad would say, Marines don't cry.
So my dad said the same thing.
You know, and I can remember
Same.
when I was much older thinking, and my dad was a great guy. Not it's just like you said, they say what they say. And I remember when I was like, it wasn't until I was probably like 30, I was like, wait a minute, I wasn't a Marine.
I was 3.
But they just looked down on that express, and man, we didn't talk about our feelings. That wasn't something that we did or express.
So why is it important to do that, right? So this, I promise I'll tie this back to the fun stuff in a minute, but why is this important? Well, you had these guys running around, unable to unburden themselves. And so that burden went on to all the people they were meant to be protecting. That bandwidth to protect goes beyond physical.
Mental, emotional, yes,
right?
Agreed.
So if you don't have the space within you, mentally, emotionally, you cannot provide that for other people.
If you can't protect even your own mental health, and your own physical,
and the space, and to offload
it,
if you don't have a way to feel protected mentally and emotionally,
you can't share it. Yeah,
right.
You
so
can't
look,
give away something you don't have.
To a lot of people, you're a boss, a leader, the guy, right? Probably the head of a lot of people's lives in a certain capacity, right? Dad, right? Pastor at one time. So this leader figure. Now, even you need somebody to support you with the heavier stuff that you got going on.
Man, can't underestimate that enough. And it took a long time to actually learn that was, one of the things you'll get from doing that. And it is having someone else and getting to that point where, you know what, I actually want to be a better man is, this idea of turning and facing towards it. When a storm comes, the cows will do one thing and buffalo will do another.
Right.
Cows will go away from the storm, and exponentially more of them will die from the storm than the buffalo, which turns and goes right into the storm.
Right.
They'll just go through it. The best example of that is, this is just coming off of UFC 300 Max Holloway. At one point, at the very end, just pointed to the middle and just was like, right here is here's the moment where prepare yourself for that moment in life where, what am I going to do when it comes up? Is it going to be right here and face it and go through it? Because, man, there is freedom on the other side of that.
Absolutely.
And this is coming from someone who's my level of run and avoidance stuff is extreme. Like I can honestly say when I turn and face it, when I do turn and face it, and you go through it, you're like, that wasn't even that bad.
Okay, so why is that important, right? If you're not hip to that idea, right? If you don't understand that I need also support, I also need guidance so that there's more of me available to protect the people that are relying upon me, okay? So that didn't happen for not the few generations before me, and I'm going to guess that didn't happen for many generations before that.
Yeah.
So, women had a warranted mistrust in men. And I think
because they were on their own, fighting all these demons on their own, no support whatsoever,
right.
Losing, and you can't, you're not gonna win,
right?
Without,
right. So they didn't want that, right? So what they tried to do, and what they are trying to do is, because we don't want that, we just want castrated little bitches.
Yeah,
and that's, it's not.
See, I think they want that, but the true feminine spirit doesn't.
It's the pendulum
want that.
swing. No, of course,
it is.
It's a fearful pendulum swing.
Right.
The pendulum swings from fear. The pendulum, well, I don't like that, so I got to get as far away from that as possible, right? The pendulum, I don't see the pendulum swing from people that have nuance, can think in the gray, right?
That's such a good point. The pendulum swings from fear.
It swings from fear.
That's so true.
So we go, boom.
That's so true. You see it. I've seen
Trump,
my lifetime
Biden,
back and forth.
Back to Trump.
Oh my goodness.
it's all that ever happens. Human beings, and why that happens is because people, and I hate using these people as if there's no people that do this, but there's a large segment of people that won't slow down enough to analyze their own fearful reactions. Okay? And because they won't analyze their own fearful reactions, they just have a feeling. They make it a fact that this is how it is because they don't examine it any further of really what's under the surface.
They
of this
find
fear.
something to co-sign that.
Find something to co-sign it, and then and they're just attached to that belief system, right? So I understand why women don't want the 1950s version of the American man. there were some good things about it. Those guys got shit done. They were sturdy in a lot of ways. They were also emotionally crippled and weak.
Yeah.
That emotional safety is even more important than the physical safety in this day and age, right? There was a time, a long, I'm talking like hunter-gatherer times where
saber-toothed tigers.
where the men definitely, the physical is probably the most important thing because that's what's going to keep us alive.
In a long time.
Hasn't
There's
been
no
that way in a long
saber-toothed
time.
lion
So
coming.
what men need to, I think, our parts, right? So we could sit here and we can blame the government. We can blame this, this psyop to erase men, right? I could sit here and blame that all day, or we
Be a
could,
victim.
or we could take responsibility, right, and realize that it's our job to reevaluate our ideas of creating safety. I think the physical definitely still needs to be a part of that. I think as we get into this age where everything is automated and people lose more and more contact with their body, I think just the act of being able to be physically prepared and physically strong is still important, but the emotional piece is the piece that has been missing, all right? And I would even go as far as to say is the emotional and spiritual piece is the piece that has been missing. And so as, I'm out there in the world trying to do my thing, and you're taking yourself on and taking challenges, and more men are taking on that challenge to go deeper with themselves.
Yeah.
Then we can start to provide a safety where women are not going to, the pendulum is not going to need to swing anymore.
Yeah.
Right? The
Or
pendulum
it'll
is not
swing
going
the
to
other way.
And
which
the
is
thing
the
is,
right way you
yeah,
want.
or we just want it to balance out. I don't necessarily
Yeah.
need it to swing. I want it to
Go back.
teeter
down,
off
yeah.
into the middle. It's the center. The center, and it's challenging to always stay centered, right? But that's the goal, is to stay centered. So yeah, it'll rock a little bit one way or the other, a little bit to the right, a little bit to the left, but more center than not. Right now, it's rarely
Way
visiting
off.
the center.
Yeah.
It might touch the center as it swings all the way back
Yeah.
to the other side, but it's rarely in the center. And it's when a person is centered, think about a man that's centered and grounded, and he walks into a room, there's calm that can come over people, versus if it swings to the right, there's this, we'll say, violently aggressive maniac or a sniveling little bitch on the other side.
Either way, the vibe is so. It's
repelling.
yes, it's repelling. That's the word for
It's
it.
repelling. Either way, it's repelling, right? That centered person walks into the room. That's got a hold of his center. He walks into the room, and the energy in the room changes. Calm can take place.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Which one do I want to be for the people in my world?
Obviously, the calm one.
I want to create calm. I want to create safety.
And back to your point of just or fair. Yeah, the government, all this stuff, but I can't blame them. It's not just or fair. Okay, so get over it. I believe if you're a man, you're not going to get all the gratitude. You may go through your entire life without any appreciation. You got to get over that. That's not fair. Who cares? Who cares if you got to do all the work? Who cares if life is unfair? Who cares? Good. I think we came here for the hard shit.
Sure.
On a real level, I think we came here. We didn't come here just to say, okay, I want to be coming into this life and I'll just be in this little nest. We came here for the hard shit. And the more we can not only embrace it, look into it, but enjoy it, figure out a way to enjoy the process of getting there. The idea of progress equals happiness wherever you're at right now. Because I know some people hear this, if they're honest with themselves, they're not ready. Because I started tripping on this, because I come from Nebraska. Everybody has a gun. So it blew me away when I California how he didn't. And I would be like, well, what's your plan? And when people say stuff like, well, I'll call the police, I was like, really? I just didn't.
That's nowhere on my Rolodex of options.
Never. They've never made a situation better, ever.
Nowhere on
ever.
my
Not
Rolodex of
one
options is call the
particular
police.
time. The only time I would tell someone to call the police is a girl if a guy is hitting them. I'd say call the cops on his ass just to put him through. Not that he's even going to get punished, just to be a pain in his ass.
Yeah.
Just to put it on the radar. But I think they help? No, it's one of those. It's not just. It's not fair. Yet I enjoy life. You know what I mean? Yet I've come to grips with a lot of stuff that's not just and not fair. And I'm still trying, centered sometimes, not centered sometimes. But I kind of starting to know where the center is. I'm starting to know where it is when I want to be. You know, the stakes are a lot higher when you're raising kids. I'm kind of want to make sure they can see what the example is. And you know what? They'll build on it. They'll probably look back and go, you know, our parents did the best they could with what they had. Good. It should stack.
We should be building on that for sure.
Yeah.
And I think to some degree that we are. I think, again, it's just swung a little bit too far, right? I think the way that people are asking men to be helped, I think modern therapy is a bit feminized. I think they want men to process their feelings the way that women do. And like I said, there's some utility for that. I don't think it can be the end all be all for that. And to be honest, I don't think it's like that for women either. I think I work with a lot of women in my coaching practice, and one of the reasons they come from me is because they've gotten what they can get out of the feminine model of processing. And sometimes they need a little bit more of a masculine approach, right?
Makes sense.
And they actually do get a lot of value. So I think both men and women could use the masculine care, right? There's a different feel between the masculine care. And I explain it like this, and I've said this on a bunch of podcasts, so if I'm repeating myself, I apologize. But the feminine care is come here, everything's going to be okay, right? And mom just kind of like calms you back to baseline, right?
Masculines fix it.
And also, the masculine is the care that can walk you into danger, right? So we're going to do this thing, even though it's scary. I'm right here. I got you.
Yeah.
Right? That's the difference. If we just coddle, which is actually necessary too. Sometimes a person needs to be coddled. Sometimes they just need to be comforted and nothing else, right? And also, if we just keep them there, they don't get stronger, right? So the masculine care, for me, as I understand it, is the one that'll hold your hand and walk with you into the danger.
Yeah, I like that.
Right?
You know, and even if you want to tune down to level 1, you know, when you say healthy relationship with violence, you can dial it down to just conflict. Start there.
Conflict.
Most people are terrified of
that's a great way to put it.
I mean, that's the level 1 white belt violence is, can you even handle if someone doesn't agree with you?
Right.
Like some people can't. It's like, okay, you gotta learn to embrace that, enjoy it, and turn into it. You don't mean you have to fight with them. Doesn't mean you have to, you know.
Do you lose your center because somebody disagrees with you?
Right.
So here's an easy way to put it, right? To me, the center is freedom. If you can be centered no matter what, you're actually free. It's the guy that needs all the circumstances to be exactly in place for him to be at ease. He's never going to be at ease because even when all the circumstances are put into place, he's going to be busy micromanaging them and fearfully trying to keep them from rearranging themselves into a way that he's not okay with, right? So if I need all the things to be okay in order for me to be okay, I have no freedom.
None.
Right? Think about that. It's like pushing fucking ping pong balls down in a pool. You push these down, the others pop up. Or you can just be okay with ping pong balls being ping pong balls.
Being all over the pool,
right?
yeah.
And if you can stay in your center with that, then you're free.
So that centered is freedom. That's one of the other things I wanted to unpack with you is freedom. That's one of the areas where, I mean, that was my number 1 value for years. And I worked myself in a position where I was free from anything.
Now, what did that mean to you?
Okay. What it meant to me then is not what it means to me now.
Right.
What it meant to me then was freedom to do what I want, when I want, how I want, where I want. You know, that was to me success. And once I got to that point, I could go to Hawaii for 21 days, not even tell anyone. I mean, free. But that doesn't allow you to be in a relationship. That doesn't allow you. You know, you think you want it, and that was one of the first things that I can remember when we first started coaching. It was so clear to me in one day. In literally one day, the first time you unpacked it, actually, here's what you said. This was kind of funny, is because I was good. And you're like, what? You're like, we're talking, me and you, a group of men, again, real men coming together and holding each other accountable, just talking, having a conversation. And I was basically, I don't think I need any goals. I was good. And you said, you know that wandering around is a feminine energy. And I just remember I couldn't unring that bell. It's true. You know, it's true. There was a season for that, but if you don't have that wasn't freedom, because for freedom, you got to have, you know, that means I couldn't have any appointments or anything. That's what it meant in my mind.
Right.
And man, try meeting with me. Try even get me on the phone in those days. Try even get me to return a text. It was absolute freedom, but it was there was nothing fulfilling about it. It wasn't me doing my role as a man. It wasn't until I realized, no, I'm not alive unless I'm, a buffalo hunter, unless I'm going out and doing something. And what that requires is a different kind of freedom. It's discipline is that path to freedom. It's deciding. I'm free to decide what I want, and then making the commitment to do the steps, to walk through the work, to do whatever I have to do to get there. That's become more my focus on freedom. Still not great at it. I mean, the problem is when you build yourself to a certain level of success where you don't have to be there, it makes it. I've had to build meetings and stuff to kind of take away my own freedom in my mind with discipline.
Right.
And it's already paying dividends.
Right. Yeah. Well, so you've spoken to a lot there, and I think the first thing is I know so many people. I have a lot of clients that come to me that are very financially well off. Some of them are lower scale millionaires. Some of them are multi-millionaires. And the idea was, if I get enough money and I get enough things on autopilot, I'll be able to do what I want when I want, and that's freedom. And what they find out invariably is that is not freedom. In fact, they often feel less free. In fact, they're often bombarded with just the endless range of choice, because once you've got it where you don't have to do anything, there's nowhere to direct your energy.
Endless range of choice means, and if you have so many options, endless range of choice means you do nothing.
You do nothing.
Everyone thinks they want to go, we work all year to go on a vacation, and visiting places is great, but I would go, and by week number 2 in Hawaii, I'd be, okay, what else? You can't sit by the pool every day. You can't go to the beach. You can't wander every day. You can't, you start filling yourself up with stuff, but it's such a false ending to think that that's the freedom you want.
Right.
Now, you do want freedom of choice. You do want freedom to be able to do it. You want to unlock that stuff. But I've learned the hard way that absolute freedom in doing. We're not here to retire. I'm here to. I'm here for 100 years, and at this point forward, I need to find buffaloes to hunt, or something, because sitting home on vacation only lasts for. And I did it for a couple of years. I did 8 Hawaii trips in 2 years, so I got good at just going all over the world and being free. But you're right. I did not feel free. I felt like a restless, pent-up energy of like, what am I doing? What am I? Should I buy another new car, another fancy car? Should I buy another?
Yeah, dude. That energy. Look, that energy's got to get directed somewhere, and if it's not getting directed somewhere meaningful, a person, a man, any human is going to feel lost. Like women, men, anybody, right? You can only wander for so long. Wandering is also necessary. But it can't be the only thing. Right. So, yeah, there's a time and a season to direct that energy, to be laser focused, to be building, to be creating, right, to be making the world better in some way, shape or form. And then there's time for rest. There's time for, just directionless, just sort of being with yourself. And that's sort of where we can kind of recoup that energy to focus it again. It's not just one or the other, right? They're both really important. Balance, right? Again, I'm never going to stay directly in the center most of the time. Life is going to ask me to move one way or the other, but not too far off from the center, right? And so like I can always come back to that center place. That's what's really important to me. Not that it's just important to me, but it's an effective way to live. To your earlier point, if you can't be disagreed with without getting upset, if you think words somehow don't agree with your lived experience are violence towards you, you are not free. And you might say, well, I'm not free because of the way that you're talking to me or the way that you're invalidating my life experience. And then I will say to you, well, then you, my friend, are the textbook of a victim, right? What you're telling me is that because of my beliefs that you can't feel free, because I disagree with your lived experience or your perceptions of things, that you can't live free.
Right.
So to have a relationship with conflict a healthy relationship with conflict is the ability to do that. Am I free to let my wife have a bad mood without me.
That's a good, by the
taking
way,
on.
that's a good extra word you added in there. Not just a relationship with conflict, but a healthy relationship with conflict. Like you're almost going to embrace that's going to happen.
You got a
Get good at
relationship
it.
with it.
Get
It's
good
just,
at it.
Is it a good one or not?
How do you get good at jujitsu?
Yeah, you should fucking practice.
Just go to the mat.
That's it.
Just go to the mat. So practice those conflicts. Don't be afraid. The best managers, leaders, everything are ones that just aren't afraid of conflict. Or
I'll say this as much as like I don't think that you can have a healthy romantic relationship without conflict.
Oh no, you can't.
Right? Conflict avoidant couples, in my experience, end up becoming rude mates.
Roommates, or in my case, big personality. If you're not willing to stand up and have a little bit of conflict, you just fall down, and then I lose respect for the whole. It just doesn't.
Yeah. So it ends up dysfunctional one way or the other, right? Passion will leave the relationship.
Right.
So the ability to, this is how I'm looking at it, this is how you're looking at it, it's different. That opportunity to come to an understanding, it's like conflict is actually a pathway to intimacy. Intimacy is to know and see something at a deeper level, right? To reveal more
Work
of oneself,
through something,
right? So we don't let everybody see these deeper parts of our character. That's why, that's what intimacy is. It's special. There's a quality to it that's rare, right? And the people that you allow yourself to be intimate with, doesn't necessarily have to be romantically intimate, but you let them in to see more of you. Well, conflict is an opportunity to let somebody see more of you, to get to know more of you, to get acquainted with more of you. Every time we hide from conflict, we're actually hiding who we authentically are, how we authentically feel, and we deny our partner the opportunity to meet that part of us.
Yeah.
And so if you do that for long enough, you're going to destroy the intimacy in your relationship.
Right. Then it just is two roommates.
Yeah,
not
I'm basically presenting a character that I think if I present myself this way, it will keep things a way that I'm comfortable with. And comfortable in this context is not forcing me to look at myself through conflict, because I have a poor relationship with conflict. I have a poor relationship with violence, with the discomfort of disagreement. Yeah.
That idea of freedom, I think some people don't get to a point where they get to it. I think it's important to say it to men up front, because some people, let's start here. We want to say we're not free because of this, that, this, other, everything's out there. But where are we really not free? It's right here. This is all the work is right here. And it takes a long time to realize there. It's not out there. The freedom is right here. All the oppression, bullies, all that kind of stuff is going to be there. But the freedom is right here. I don't think anyone has held me more captive than my own self. Not even close. 100%. No one's even close to as hard on me or as close to binding up what I can do and can't do as right here. So that freedom starts with knowing it's here. That it has nothing to do with what happens to you in the world. It's really nothing at all. That's just the stimulus that shows, like you say, the hot water that shows who you are. Where's that at, and where do you start to build on it? I think to start to build on it, you realize, it's not freeing yourself from someone. It's freeing this, all the stuff that chains you down right there.
Yeah, I fucking love the movie The Matrix, right? And I watch it pretty often. I think it's more relevant today than it was when it got released. If you don't look at...
It's like a documentary.
If you don't look at your programming, if you never examine your programming, you just go along with the programming thinking that that's just the way that it is. I'm just think this way. I'm just like this, right? So you buy into this story of your life.
Stop on that for a second, unpack that a little more, because the idea of programming, okay, if you don't, we're all programmed. Whether we programmed ourselves or other people, we're programmed primarily by, just our upbringing, society, whatever. The programming is there. It happens automatically. Until you get in and take responsibility and almost, instead of programming, reprogram. Like take an honest look at, when I read the 4 agreements and it kind of said to question everything, all your beliefs, that's when a lot of things really unraveled for me, and it have been ever since.
Scary to do initially.
Initially, but big ones, you're kind of like, wait a minute, why do I believe this?
Right.
But once you get really through your soul that whatever programs are running, they're running. They're running with or without me. So if I don't add some, attachment programs and start to build them and make those programs somehow, overcome some of the programs that are already there. It's about reprogramming.
Absolutely. Yeah. So you open up a tab when you're 5 on your computer screen in your head, right? And you just left that tab open. And as long as that tab's open, that the programming is operative.
Yeah.
Right? And so do we ever just pause? It's like, do I actually believe this? Do I feel this way about this particular thing? Or is this what I was told I'm supposed to believe? Right?
Which is religion.
Absolutely. Right. So, and then it's just really asking yourself, does this actually feel true to me? Does this feel true to me, or does this feel like the answer I have to give? Do I feel wrong if I give a different answer? Do I feel like I'm betraying something if I give a different answer? Right. And I think in the beginning, it can be a little bit hard to tap into the subtleties of self-honesty because there are so many layers to it, right? So in the work that I do with my clients, sometimes they'll initially have a reaction to a thing. Like they actually really have a lot of anger towards their parents. And then in the next breath, they'll say, yeah, but I know I shouldn't feel like that because they did the best they can. Now, I understand that they logically see that their parents did the best they can, but also emotionally, there's a pain that's sitting there that's actually honest to them. If they were really honest with themselves, they could say, yes, logically, I know my parents did the best they can. And also, I still have some hurt here and anger towards them. Both can be true at the same time, right? And it's just about being honest with what's there, okay? So, yeah, I grew up in this environment where I was told to go to college and get a job. For some people, that's a reality, right? My parents were pressuring me to become a doctor because that's what everybody else in my family did. This is not my family. My family was all criminals. And so the person feels like that's what they have to do. And then they get to a point where they're like, I actually don't want to do this, but it's so scary for me to admit that I don't want to do this, because if I admit that I don't want to do this, then I have to confront that truth, and I probably will have to confront my parents about this, who I already feel a tremendous sense of pressure from. So think about all the things that are surrounding a person admitting that type of truth to themselves and what that implies, what that implicates for them after that. Okay. Once I'm honest with me and I admit that whatever's true for me and I go on not living my life like that, I know that I'm living a lie.
Okay, that's the key difference right there. Because I've found from my personal experience, I can have flashes of honesty with myself and still put it away. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? Sure. It's not just about, because sometimes be honest with yourself and then still step to the middle of the ring, point your finger down and say, okay, I got to work through this in my brain. Because there's some things I would come to grips with on my own and I would be like, I'm going to put that till later.
Yeah.
Deal with it later. And
Why
just
do you think
let
you did
the
that?
old program run. Probably uncomfortable to go through. I'll tell you why. And I learned this from you primarily, is these parts are there to protect you. Mm-hmm. They think they're doing the right thing. The parts these voices in your head think they're doing the right thing. They think they're protecting you. They don't know how counterproductive they are because they just don't know any better. That's the program they are. So that program wants to feel safe and left alone and feel like we're okay. And sometimes it's easy to just go, yeah, for sure that's true, but that's let me plan a trip.
Yeah.
That's the reality of it.
Yeah.
But I also say, if you're a man, you can't let yourself off the hook, because there's a direction you go. You can keep going that direction, you keep going the other. You're going.
Price
one way
has to get paid one way or the other.
Right. Oh man, so true.
There's a price to pay to living authentically.
So true.
That price is, Mom, Dad, I don't want to be a doctor. I want to pursue. I've had kids like, I want to pursue a fight career, and like, if that's what you want to do, man, who am I? I don't know. You may not even ever become like a great fighter, but the path of you following what's honest and true for you is gonna.
They'll find out.
They'll find out.
They'll find out
where's your life might be bringing you to a different place than the previous generations of your family. That's okay, right? So there's a price to pay for authenticity, and that not everybody's gonna agree with the authentic you, and taking ownership for how people react to you, not making somebody else's reaction your story, which happens a lot, right? There's also a price to pay for not living authentically. There's a price to pay for letting your dreams die. There's a price to pay when you dull yourself out because it makes other people uncomfortable. There's a price to pay for that too, right? You will pay a price one way or the other.
Pretty extreme price too, because it's your life. It's your destination.
Absolutely, man. So early on, I think to some degree, I understood that, especially as I started like getting sober and getting my life together. I've always had a general tendency to move towards the truth, right? And let me just put this under the light of truth, as much truth as I understand right now, not the truth I want to believe, right? Does this actually feel true to me? And then move towards that.
Yeah, and then move towards that.
And then move towards it.
And or because you can realize it again and put it away.
Well,
that's
what
the
happens
key.
in plant
that
medicine
action.
ceremonies and all these peak experiences and festivals that people go to and trainings. They go and they have this almost mystical experience, plant medicine ceremony, whatever. And it acquaints them. What I think that experience is, it equates them with a level of truth that just opens up the world to them. But they fail to continue moving towards it, right? Which is the integration process of anything. You can go to a Tony Robbins seminar, have the same thing happen. You can leave there on fire, right? A couple days, it might even last a couple weeks, right? You're just lighter. And because you don't actively move towards that truth and integrate it,
You go right back
you
to
go
the
right
old
back to
programs.
baseline. And you'll always go back to some sort of baseline, in my experience. It's just I want to raise that baseline
change
each
the
time.
baseline, yeah.
I want to raise it each time. So if I started, right, for those of you watching on YouTube, if I started at we'll say I started at a 1, okay, and I get through the process, I hit a 10, I hit this 10. Well, if I level back down even to like a 3, well, then that's a level up. I'm up at 3 as opposed to my baseline was 1 before that.
Yeah.
Right. But I don't want to go to 1, shoot to 10, and drop down to back down to a
Right.
1 again and just
The
stay
Tony
there.
Robbins event.
Then I'm not moving again.
Yeah. You know, if you do it right, because there was a couple, I'd go up to a 10 and down to a 2 instead of 1. There's progress in that kind of stuff.
Hey.
But if you don't take the information and actually try to reprogram some of, which I think also falls to why it's so important to have some leadership in your life, where someone is being
That's the missing
honest
piece.
with you.
Yeah.
Where leadership, accountability, it's compliance, accountability. None of those are my favorite words, but they're the best thing for me. They're the best thing. Well, not compliance, but
Yeah.
but leadership, it really is for me, because I am so extra when it comes to, I'm gonna do whatever the F I want, and then it took what it took to realize there's nothing down that path. That's why when it comes to like coaching, when it comes to leadership, when it comes to someone forcing yourself to be honest, like if I know I'm gonna meet with someone, like if I tell someone I meet someone 1 week, and then I'm meeting with them a week later, and I told them I'm gonna do X, Y, Z, and I don't, I have to, that will push me forward.
For sure.
You've been in the ring before and fought, or in the cage. As well as me, or a million times better than me. But I would hope you agree with me, because I will sometimes fight better to not let down my corner and the people around me. I'd go to jiu-jitsu tournaments. I didn't want to disappoint Rodrigo and Stefan. Everything else was kind of like. I mean, of course, that aggression, but I'm nervous. I didn't care what the results, but I care what the results of what the leaders believed in me and saw.
Right.
That's why if you don't have those kind of people in your life
Right.
that are saying, go to the center, go through it, get better at it. And again, men, and I'm the perfect example of it. I'm fine by myself. I'm fine by myself. But you're not. You're not. If no one's in your corner saying, hey, come on, man, you're going to do a little bit better. No great fighter, athlete, anything has got to where they got without someone saying to them, you got this, you can do this. Someone who believes in you, someone who truly has your best interest in mind.
I really don't believe.
I think men don't
self-made
have.
men.
Yeah, I don't think a lot of men have that
No, they don't.
right now.
They don't. And so, yeah, I would frame that slightly different in that accountability. I think, sure, we can use these motivators if I don't want to let these people down. The best accountability, or the most effective accountability for me, is holding up a mirror to you, to what's important to you, right? So you said you wanted to do this, right? This is what you did, right? You either did or didn't do it, right? What was more important to you than doing this? And then you get to reflect back to me what was more important to you, or honestly ask yourself, well, what was more important to me? And then, is that actually more important to me? Well, what lies or fears did I give into instead of doing?
Story.
So that's the accountability, right?
Story,
It's like, it's not this just like this one and done type of deal where it's like, come on, Tommy, you said you were going to do it. Well, sure, that could be a part of it, but it's like, Tommy, you told me that you wanted to get this done, and you didn't do that. So I'm not here to yell at you and wag my finger at you. What I'm here to do is ask you what was more important than the thing that you said was important to you.
And what you'll get, because I've done the same thing, someone says they want to do something. This is what I want to do. That's when you do accountability. Anything short of not getting there is just a story, whatever your story is. You can always dial it back to that's what you said you wanted to do. It's not me saying, hey, you should do this, this, and this.
Right.
This is me sitting down and saying, and you do the same thing. What is it you want to accomplish, or what is it you want to do when the person says they want to do? Well, a week later, that should be a huge blinking red light if you just have a bunch of stories. That's where, again, you're honest with yourself and you find the right leaders. Because most people, to be honest, they'll find those kind of leaders. Those kind of leaders are too much for them. They don't want to get judged. You know, when I realize you're not getting judged, you're not getting looked down.
If you feel judgment, that's your judgment.
Exactly.
To you that you feel.
And the run from that, it takes a certain amount of balls to be able to say, and once you do that to a couple times where you say you're going to do something and then you don't, it's like, okay.
So then we get to look
my
at
choice is to not work with this person anymore, or say no. That's on me.
Mm-hmm.
That's on me, and I need to keep looking at the mirror till I figure out why I'm saying one thing and not doing it.
Yeah,
integrity is everything. You want to be a criminal? Fine, be a criminal. Say you're a criminal. Own it. Do it wrong. Do it strong. You do what you're going to be. You know what I mean? Do what you're going to be in life. But if you say you're going to do something, that's where I realized I had a lot of wishy-washes in my life. No, I'm going to do this. Maybe not, because it was just up to me. But if there's someone, a leader, coach, you know, a community of people that are saying, hey, did you ever do what you just said you were going to do last week?
And then I'll
Because
even
you
go
hear that enough times and you're like, no, fuck this. I'm going to get it done.
I'll go a level deeper with them. So if we notice that there's a level of avoidance that's happening, right? People are not doing what they say they're going to do. There's a fear present, there's a limiting belief present, or there's a lack of know-how present. Okay? Let's figure which one or how many of those three that it is. And then we
say those three again.
So there's a fear, a limiting belief, or a lack of know-how present.
Okay.
Could be one, could be three. But we want to get clear on what's actually there, because it's not enough. Holding somebody accountable is not enough to just say, why didn't you do that? My job as a coach is to get them to see, okay, so either there was a fear present. Well, I was afraid, perfectionism, right? I wanted to get it perfect, and my perfectionism took such a strong hold that I didn't even get started, right? That's a fear. It's also could be a limiting belief. If it's not perfect, it's not good enough, right? Or I didn't know how to do it, so I didn't get started. There was something there that I didn't know how to do that had me in a pause response where I couldn't get started because I didn't know how to do the thing.
That's something there could be something that you don't know just because you haven't learned the industry, but it could also be something that sometimes it's like, I don't know why. Like what I don't know is what makes me just decide I don't care. You know, or for whatever reason, I just don't care about it.
So that not care, when somebody says, I don't care,
they show by their actions whether they say it or not. If they don't do it, it means they didn't care enough to do it. I'm talking to myself.
Yeah. Well, and I think there's something that lies underneath the don't care. I think don't care is a protective mechanism in most cases. In my experience, the I don't care is
don't want to deal with it. Don't want to
the state of overwhelm to have to go through the inertia of that discomfort, right? So that initial discomfort and getting the ball rolling, it's like that to me just feels so like I don't want to do that.
I think you're spot on with that.
And so it's easier for me to just say I don't care, or to not care, or to find something that feels, or to chase some kind of pleasure instead.
Right.
Or some sort of just distracted avoidant behavior.
Yeah. That works for a season.
Works, until you just get so fucking sick of doing it. And it's like everybody in the studio is nodding their head because we're all like, we've all done that. You know, we've all done that. Like, dude, I can do that at times with certain things in my life. You know, and I do this for a living, so I don't think anybody's exempt from it. It happens. It's just like, man, it's the only way I get through this, though.
And the other side of that is once you know it, it's almost like you can't stay in denial. You know, you're going to go one way.
Yeah, time is limited.
Or another. Yeah, then the time is ticking because then it's right there.
Yeah. So we definitely covered a lot today. Any closing thoughts before we let this one go to bed?
Man, thanks for coming. It's been a great conversation. I knew it would be. I appreciate your friendship. I appreciate your coaching. I appreciate your example, marriage, just everything that you do. You know, you're authentic, which I don't find very much at all. And you have zero fear of me whatsoever, which I don't always find that much either. Even the people that I work with, I can tell they have a little bit of like, you just don't seem to have that. So I appreciate your heart and your passion. This is us for like 100 years doing the best we can. We don't have all the answers, obviously.
That's it.
But when you're committed to going the right way and, to growing and becoming a bigger and better man, nothing but good comes from that. Because like you said, once you know, you can only hide from it so long. You have to either go through it or it's just going to, the price you pay. I've learned the price you pay for not just stepping into it and growing and finding leaders and holding yourself accountable. The price to pay is pretty extreme.
Yeah.
I had a lot of momentum going at one point, and once I got to that freedom, a few years of freedom took away all momentum, and I realized that discipline and that work and that drive and all that stuff, that doesn't just turn back on. That doesn't. You got to kind of. Maybe it does for some, but I'm realizing, I can't just float down the river of doing nothing. But it's not easy to jump back into that. Okay, I'm back on track again. I guess I say all that to say that if you allow yourself to just deny stuff, you slide back. It's harder to get to where you are, back to even centered. Once you let yourself be off centered and be pushed way off center, you don't just pop back to center. So if I had any final thoughts, I would say if you're a man, take a look at this stuff. What are you at? Where are you at? Are you centered? Do you have a healthy relationship with conflict, which is like ultimately scales up to violence? Are you free? Are you free? And be honest with yourself. And then if you're not, take some action.
Absolutely. Yeah. As I'm listening to you say that and talk about the belief system that drives the man or the person to want to just get to this place where they can do whatever they want whenever they want, and the lack of freedom that comes with that. And to me, what's really meaningful, and I think as I look at it, is I just pursue the true, the good, and the beautiful. And that's what's meaningful. As long as I'm doing that in some way, there's going to be tough times. There's going to be easy times. There's going to be exciting times.
It's life.
There's going to be boring times. It's life. But I feel really fulfilled as long as I'm pursuing those three things, right? The true, the good, and the beautiful.
The true, the good, and the beautiful.
Yeah, I think that. What the fuck else is there?
Yeah, I like that.
If we have a life, if we have 100 years, as you put it, right? And I can make this thing mean whatever I want it to mean. Well, why wouldn't I go after that as a primary?
The true, the good, the beautiful. That is actually a great true north.
It's not mine. It's some Greek philosopher.
It is pretty good though. There's. Well, I'm convinced anything we come up with, we're just stacking on
100%.
else. But that's a well put destination, and then there's
the easiest thing to orient myself towards. I can always orient myself towards that. That's what we're doing on this podcast. I find all those things in these conversations, even the things that I'm railing against, even the things that I think are bullshit. It's just like it's my opportunity to just express that.
Yeah,
look. There's a part of me that is empowered as anybody will ever meet. There's also a part of me that's a whiny little bitch, right? And sometimes I get to come on here and I get to be all those things at the same time. I don't want to live from the whiny little bitch, right? But it exists. I have my things I like to gripe about, my little pisses and moans about how society's doing it wrong and all that stuff. And it's fine. It's like I don't want to pretend that I'm not that. Like, we are multifaceted creatures with many, many different parts, and I think they're all beautiful if you just look at them for what they are. It's like, oh, it's interesting that this one person can contain so many different pieces of themselves, right? So many little different fractions that make the whole.
I think a lot of this comes from, that's why I think we have great conversations, because I question everything. I'm kind of a truth seeker from the other side of, like, I don't believe anything until it's tried, true, and tested, and I've come to realize, because I always question everything and was looked down on that for that, and come to realize it's probably my greatest quality. Continue to keep questioning, continue to keep getting better, and continue to keep finding good things. The true, the good, and the beautiful.
That's
I fucking love that. Whoever came up with that.
One of my smarter fans will be able to give just credit to that. So, all right, guys, that's it for us in this installment and hope you guys enjoyed the conversation. As always, like, share, subscribe, tell your friends to do the same, and appreciate your support. We'll see you guys next time.